And the presidential campaign was officially joined this weekend by another campaigner, California's Senator Kamala Harris, made it official yesterday before a crowd of over 20,000 in Oakland, California. We are joined tonight by presidential candidate and Massachusetts Senior Senator Elizabeth Warren. Senator, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here.
So Tuesday night at 9 p.m., there's a speech going on in the Capitol. You want to be there?
You bet. I'm going to hear it. I think that's my responsibility, is to be there, to see it in person. Look straight back at that.
What should, after the longest shutdown in history, what should the President of the United States have to say about that in his State of the Union address?
Look, what he should have to say is that he's sorry, but the chances of that happening are somewhere south of zero. I spent today with federal workers who were a combination of delighted to be back at work and really angry about how they've been treated. I talked to one worker who said she opened up her email and she had 1,200 unread emails. She said, I won't be able to get all my emails caught up in 3 weeks. I talked to another federal worker who is the primary breadwinner for her family. She has 3 little kids, and she talked about what it meant not to get her paychecks, that her work colleagues who were out of work were actually calling her and sending money over, that she couldn't make her rent. And as she put it, her landlord was saying, look, what am I going to do? He said, I got to make payments on the building. It was just one tale after another of harm. And for what? So that the president could have a big national tantrum? This is not how we should treat federal workers, and they should not be a bargaining chit in a Republican political game.
Well, he seems to have introduced the possibility that they will be a bargaining chip again on February 15th when this funding runs out. But there were reports over the weekend that your Republican Senate colleagues sent the message to the White House, there will be over 70 votes the next time Chuck Schumer tries to bring up that bill that Nancy Pelosi sent over. The Republicans apparently were going to stampede in favor of it. They were going to reopen the government if the president didn't.
Yeah, well, all I can say is I sure hope so, because that is our responsibility, is to keep the government open and functioning, keep people who are working paid for their work, and keep people able to do their jobs and getting paid for that as well. And the same for federal contractors, and the same for all the people who, run the food trucks and the restaurants outside where federal work is going on. It really is the case. This is an injury. This is like just, it's the classic shooting yourself in the foot. And part of the cost, yes, it's economic. Yes, it's what it does to federal workers, but it's also what it does to faith in government. Both here at home and around the world. The whole rest of the world watched and said, you can't keep your act together any better than that? To the President of the United States of America, you can't even keep the wheels on enough to keep this thing moving forward. So I really hope that it's just more bluster when he says that he may shut it down again in 3 weeks. I don't know, but I know this. The American people, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, do not want our federal workers shut out of their jobs, and they do not want to force them to show up to work and not get paid.
How much Trump wall funding are you willing to vote for in the next budget bill that comes through the Senate?
None.
Zero?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, I just think the wall makes no sense at all. It is not about border security. I'm in favor of border security. We can negotiate about border security. The wall is a monument to hate and division. That's what it's about. It's a symbol. It's a way of trying to divide people, turn people against each other. And that's not who we are as a country. We want security. We can have that conversation, but not just ugliness.
Acting Attorney General Whitaker today said that the Mueller report, he used language indicating it could be ready soon, the investigation could be over soon. You have a bipartisan bill now developing in the Senate with Chuck Grassley, and I think it's Senator Blumenthal, to basically make sure that the Mueller report is public.
Yes.
Do you support that? Do you believe that's going to have majority support in the Senate?
Yes. look, I support it. Whether it has majority support, I'm not sure yet. And of course, the problem always is if Mitch McConnell won't bring it up for a vote, then we can't get it voted on. I believe we've got to protect Mueller. I still think we should be protecting Mueller, but I absolutely think that report has got to be made public. That's how we'll know what the right next steps are.
There is an old Governor Mario Cuomo saying that you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. You seem to be campaigning in prose also. What Mario Cuomo meant was the campaign is filled with general, good-sounding lines, but not that much specific, not that much policy. You seem to be coming in policy first, front-loading this campaign with policy. You were kind of front-loading it before you ever announced in the last 6 months. The latest, the Warren proposal of trying to tax wealth, not just wealth, what we would call super wealth, wealth accumulation above $50 million. This has gotten more attention than any policy yet announced by anyone in this campaign, and a lot of it is some pretty heavy attacks on you. What is your case for this wealth tax, which is not a form of taxation the federal government has tried before?
That's right. It is new, except do keep in mind, let's just talk a little fairness here. Middle-class America has been paying a wealth tax forever. It's called a property tax on their principal accumulation of wealth, which is their home.
Yeah, state taxation, there's no question about it. They absolutely do tax wealth.
And all this one says is, let's do it at the federal level, and how about we'll also tax your diamonds and your yachts and your art collection and all those other ways that people accumulate wealth. Because for me, there's a fundamental fairness question here. Think of two people. One of them inherited just gobs of everything and enjoys it all. The second one is a public school teacher, doesn't have a penny in the bank, has just made it through college. Let's just say both of them earn $50,000 a year in their respective work. They would pay exactly the same in taxes, even though their economic circumstances are wildly different. And in fact, the fact that we don't tax wealth is one more way in which the system has been rigged by the rich and powerful, for the rich and powerful. So here's what we know projected this year is the tippy top, the 0.1% will pay in total taxes that they pay about 3.2% of their total wealth. That's the whole thing all in. The 99% will pay more than double that, about 7.2% of their total wealth. So part of what this is about is just to say, the playing field looks like this. Could we just make it look a little bit more like this? Could we just level the playing field a little bit? And then here's the key part. This would produce revenue about $2.75 trillion over the next 10 years. How about we invest that in childcare so that hardworking families get some relief? How about we invest that in reducing the student loan debt burden so young people who are trying to get a start in life, who want to do startups and want to try to buy homes and can't do it because of student loans, get some relief? How about we invest that in a Green New Deal to help protect this planet? How about we invest it in the things that help us build a future that's good for our economy? And that's what the wealth tax is all about.
It's being challenged on enforceability, which I have to say, when I was staff director of the Senate Finance Committee, that's one of the first ways I always looked at every tax policy. Can you enforce it, no matter whether you think it's a good idea or not? So you mentioned, for example, someone's collection of diamonds or art or other things that can be worth, we now know, hundreds of millions of dollars. What would you propose as in enforceability for putting a value on someone's art collection or whatever it is that you subject this tax to?
So do keep in mind, we do this anyway when the ultra-wealthy die. So it's not like we don't know how to value this stuff. We value this stuff all the time. And frankly, they value it for purposes of insurance. They value it for purposes of sometimes using it as collateral, right? People do valuations. The key parts to this proposal says no matter where the property is held. So moving it to Switzerland is not going to change whether or not you're subject to it. And in fact, that's an interesting part of how the law is changing around the world. So we're getting many more reciprocal tax agreements that everybody keeps track of where wealth is located and reports, so it's much more visible. The second part about the proposal is built right into the proposal is much higher auditing. Mm-hmm. So that
you need
the
more
ultra
IRS
wealthy,
personnel.
That's right. We need them generally, but the ultra wealthy on this tax. Remember, this is just the 75,000 richest families in America. It says for those folks, there's going to be a stepped up audit procedure. So you just keep checking it on a regular basis. Wait, you had this much last year, and you're saying you don't have this much this year. What happened? But remember on this, yeah. It's going to take a little paperwork. It's going to take getting people to do the valuations. But at the end of the day, it's about saying we've got to be more equitable in the distribution of what it takes to run this country and how this country builds opportunity. And I'll throw in one more about how we think about democracy. You know, part of what I keep talking about a lot is Washington works great if you're rich. Look at the tax code. Washington works great if you already can hire an army of lobbyists and an army of lawyers and an army of bought and paid for experts. It's just not working for anyone else. We can't give up on that. We've got to say we're willing to say that those who have the most got to pay 2% a year more so that we can take some of that wealth and build opportunity for the rest of our kids. You said I talk a lot as a wonk, and you're right. I totally get it. But understand, this is about big structural change, and it comes out of an understanding. My daddy ended up as a janitor, but his daughter got a chance to become a public school teacher, a college professor, and a United States senator because of investments that taxpayers made. I got to go to a college that cost $50 a semester because of the investments that taxpayers made. That's what created opportunity in this country. Today, those opportunities are shrinking up. The road is getting rockier for hardworking families, and for people of color, the road is rockier than ever. It's not right, and it's not sustainable. But here's the best part. In a democracy, we build the movement, we make the change. We're the ones who can make this government work again for the people.
There's a lot of criticism of this coming from the right and coming from Rupert Murdoch's own Wall Street Journal. That's expectable, and we're going to have plenty of time to discuss that.
Sure.
That's going to follow you throughout the campaign. The first criticism I'd like you to consider is coming from a sympathetic critic who appreciates what you're after. A Washington Post editorial saying, why not tax the income on the wealth, which is something we already know how to do. Why not tax the income on the wealth and make it a higher tax, whatever that is, instead of trying to go into this evaluation game on the wealth, which we're not sure we know how to do?
Because then you just get people to distort over to things that don't produce income. Diamonds don't produce income. Right. Artwork doesn't produce income. A yacht with an IMAX theater on it does not produce income. And the distortions are not what we're looking for. Tax planning is not what we're looking for. And besides, this really is about rigging the game. This really is about the fact that wealth has so shifted in this country. That top 0.1% that would be subject to this tax, they now own about the same wealth as 90% of America. And the way that happened is not just they worked harder or they got luckier. It's that they kept for 30 years now going to Washington saying, could you just change the rules just a little bit for us? Just give it a little. And they come back the next year and say, could you just right over here, could you just, and then maybe just a little bit more and a little bit more, until the wealth just kept flowing in their direction. A wealth tax stops and acknowledges that and says, you guys scooped up all the wealth and scooped up all the opportunity. You got to put a little bit back in the kitty for everybody else so that their kids get a chance too.
Senator Elizabeth Ward, I could go on and on. This is the Senate Finance Committee hearing that I always wanted to have, and we never did. Thank you for starting this debate. We're going to be covering it for quite a while, and please come back and join us again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really appreciate it.